Welcome to Easy Classic Stories. This is a retelling of The Gift of the Magi, a novel by O. Henry. The Gift of the Magi is a famous short story by O. Henry. It is about a couple who loves each other very much. They are poor but want to give each other special gifts for Christmas. The story has a surprise ending that makes people think about love and giving. It is very popular and many people around the world read it. The story is simple but has a big message. It shows that love is more important than money. Many people enjoy reading it because it is easy to understand and has a good lesson. Now listen carefully to the story. At the end, we'll have an exercise on key events to help test your understanding. It was Christmas Eve. A young woman named Della sat in a small room. The room was part of a cheap apartment in a big city. The furniture was old, the carpet was thin, the mirror on the wall was scratched, the mailbox downstairs was broken. On the door, the name Mr. James Dillingham Young was written. But the young man Jim now earned very little money. The name looked too big for such a small life. Della looked at the coins in her hand. She had counted them 3 times already. $1.87. That was all she had. She wanted to buy a nice Christmas gift for her husband Jim. But with this small amount, what could she buy? She sat down on a worn sofa. Tears came to her eyes. She had saved every coin from the grocery money. She had asked the butcher and the grocer to give her a few cents back each time. Still, it was not enough. Della loved Jim very much. He worked hard every day but earned only $20 a week now. They lived simply, but love filled their home. That was the best thing they had. She stood up and walked to the window. The weather was cold. Snow was falling. The wind blew hard. Della wrapped her thin coat around her. She looked outside at the grey sky and grey buildings. She felt very poor, but she still wanted to give Jim something special. She turned to the mirror and looked at herself. She had long, thick, beautiful brown hair. It fell down past her knees when she let it down. It was her one treasure. Jim also had one treasure. It was a gold watch. The watch had come from his father and before that from his grandfather. Jim loved the watch very much, but he had no chain for it, so he used an old leather strap. Della looked at her hair again. She had an idea. It was a wild idea, but it stayed in her mind. She thought about it for a long time. Then quickly she put her hair up, grabbed her coat and her hat, and left the apartment. She walked fast through the snowy streets. People passed her, busy with shopping and Christmas plans. Della walked straight ahead. She knew where she was going. She stopped at a small shop. The sign on the door said, Madame Sofroni. Hair goods of all kinds. Della opened the door and stepped inside. A large woman with cold eyes looked at her. "Will you buy my hair?" Della asked. "I buy hair," the woman said. "Take off your hat and let me see it." Della took off her hat. Her brown hair fell down like a waterfall. $20, the woman said. "Give it to me quickly," Della said. Soon, the woman cut Della's hair. Della left the shop with $20 in her hand and her head feeling light. Her hair was now short, but she smiled. She had money to buy a gift for Jim. She walked back into the cold, but she didn't feel it. She would find the perfect gift now. Della walked through the cold streets holding the money in her hand, $20 and the small 87 cents she had before. Now she had enough to buy a special gift for Jim. Her hair was gone, but she did not care. She was happy and excited. She passed many shops. Bright lights shone in the windows. People were shopping for Christmas. But Della had only one thing in mind. She wanted to find something perfect for Jim's gold watch. She looked into store windows, but nothing felt right. In one store she saw beautiful gloves. In another, a scarf. But they were not special enough. Then, in one little jewelry shop she saw it. A fine, simple watch chain made of platinum. It was thin and quiet, not too fancy but strong and beautiful. She went inside. The shop was warm. A kind man stood behind the counter. Della pointed to the chain. "That one, please," she said. The man smiled. "It is $21. Della gave him the money. She kept only 87 cents in her purse. She held the little box in her hands and walked back into the cold. As she walked, she smiled to herself. The chain was perfect. Jim would love it. It would match his watch. He could wear it proudly. It showed good taste, not flashy, just right, like Jim. Soon she reached their apartment. She climbed the steps quickly and opened the door. She went straight to the mirror. She looked at her short hair and frowned a little. Her long hair was gone. It made her feel strange. She took out the curling irons and tried to fix her hair. She curled it tightly into small rings all over her head. It made her look a bit like a schoolboy, she thought. But it was the best she could do. "If Jim doesn't kill me," she said with a small smile, "he will say I look like a boy from Coney Island." She stood back and looked at herself. "Please, God," she whispered, "make him still think I'm pretty." Della took the watch chain out of the box. It was so smooth and shiny in her hand. She wrapped it in soft paper and tied it with a small ribbon. Then she hid it under the corner of the table. The room was quiet. Outside, the sky was growing dark. The time was getting close. Jim would come home soon. Della cleaned up the room, wiped her eyes and checked the dinner. She moved nervously. She looked at the clock again and again. She could not sit still. Finally, she sat on the edge of the sofa and waited. Her heart beat fast. What would Jim say when he saw her hair? Would he be angry? Would he still smile at her? She loved him so much. She had given up her best treasure for him. But would he understand? The room was warm now. A small lamp glowed on the table. Della's hands were cold, but her face was hot. She waited and listened. Then at last she heard his step on the stairs. Light, firm, and steady. She jumped up and ran to the door. Della opened the door quickly. There stood Jim. He was thin and quiet. His coat was old and his hat looked worn from many winters. He closed the door behind him and stood still. For a moment he said nothing. He just looked at Della. His eyes were fixed on her. His face did not change. There was no smile, no anger, just a strange, quiet look. Della's heart sank. She was afraid. Did he not like it? Did he think she looked silly without her long hair? "Jim, darling," she said, "don't look at me like that. I had my hair cut and sold it because I couldn't live through Christmas without giving you a gift. It'll grow again, you won't mind, will you?" Jim still said nothing. He slowly walked over and sat down. "You've cut off your hair?" he asked softly, still looking at her. "Yes," said Della, "and sold it. I did it for you. Maybe you don't know what a nice gift I got for you." Jim looked around the room, then back at Della. His eyes were full of something. Surprise, maybe love, maybe worry, but not anger. "You say your hair is gone?" he said, almost as if he couldn't believe it. "It's gone," said Della. "It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me. Maybe the hairs on my head were counted," she said with a laugh. "But no one could ever count my love for you." Jim suddenly smiled. He stood up and walked to her. He took something from his coat pocket and gave it to her. "Don't worry about your hair," he said. "Nothing you do could make me love you less. But if you'll open this package, you may understand why I look so strange." Della opened the package with quick fingers. Then she gave a loud cry of joy, and then tears filled her eyes. Inside the package were the combs. The beautiful set of combs she had often looked at in the shop window. They were made of pure tortoise shell with little jewels. She had wanted them so much, but she had never dreamed she would have them. And now, they were hers. But her hair, the long hair that the combs were meant for, was gone. She held the combs close and smiled through her tears. "My hair grows fast, Jim," she said. Then she jumped up and gave him her gift. She placed the small box in his hand. "I hunted all over the city to find it," she said. "You'll have to look at your watch 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks with the new chain." But Jim did not take out his watch. He sat down, put his hands behind his head and smiled. "Dell," he said, "let's put our Christmas gifts away for now. They're too nice to use just yet. I sold the watch to buy the combs for your hair." Della sat very still. For a moment she said nothing. Her hands were holding the little chain, but she could not speak. Jim had sold his watch, his greatest treasure, to buy her the combs, and she had cut and sold her hair to buy him the chain for his watch. Both of them had given up something important to give the other a gift. Now, neither gift could be used. But Della did not cry. Jim did not look sad. They looked at each other, and then they both smiled. "Isn't it funny, Jim?" Della said softly. "I sold my hair to buy you a chain, and you sold your watch to buy me the combs." Jim laughed gently and nodded. "Yes," he said, "we are a pair of foolish people, but maybe we are the wisest too." He reached out and took her hand. They sat together in the small room. The lamp made the room warm and soft. Outside, snow was falling slowly. Jim put the combs back in their box and placed them on the shelf. Della wrapped the chain again and tucked it away in the drawer. They would keep the gifts even if they could not use them now. They were too special to throw away. They were full of love. Jim stood up and took off his coat. Della served the simple dinner she had prepared. They sat close at the small table, eating quietly, smiling now and then. The room was poor. There was no tree, no big lights, no music. But there was love. That was more than enough. Later, Della rested her head on Jim's shoulder. He held her close. They didn't need words. They had given each other the best gifts, gifts from the heart. And in that quiet moment, in the tiny apartment with broken furniture and soft candlelight, they felt happy. Great job sticking with the story all the way to the end. It's time to review the key ideas with a fun multiple-choice quiz. You'll find the answers in the comment section. Take your time with the questions, and don't forget to leave a comment below to let us know if you enjoyed the story. Your feedback helps us improve. If you liked it, show your support by hitting the like button. It really makes our day. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Thank you so much for being with us.